Welcome to the, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular council meeting of Tuesday, July 16th. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll take items 2, 3, and 4, which is our closed session agenda, pecuniary interest and closed session items. We'll move them to the end of the agenda. So again, I'll call the open session to order and ask if you'll stand, if you can, and join Councillor Elmsley in the singing of O Canada.
I need lots of help with the singing of O Canada, so I expect to hear you all loud and clear. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all our sons' command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you for that. Please, item 5.3, please join me for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Item 5.4 is the adoption of the open session agenda. Councillor Elmsley, I believe you have that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did you want me to include anything about the movement of the closed session or just what? Great. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Seymour Fagan, that the agenda for the open session of the regular council meeting of Tuesday, July 16, 2019, be adopted as circulated and with the following amendments. Additions, business arising from the Committee of the Whole, brought forward from July 16, 2019, Committee of the Whole meeting. Item 12.1.1, recommendation CW 2019-152. Item 12.1.2, recommendation CW 2019-154. Item 12.1.3, recommendation CW 2019-156. Addition, consent reports, item 14.1.6, report purchasing 2019-025, 2019-75 CQ, local asphalt paving, Linda Lee Beyer, Mike Farquhar, Supervisor, Technical Services.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in open or closed session? Any items on the agenda today? Seeing none. Notices and information by members of council. Is there anyone on council wishes to make an announcement? Councillor Elmsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This weekend, that's July 19th, 20th, and 21st. The Fenland Fair kicks off for the year, and it goes all day, and it is, of course, at the Fenland Fairgrounds. So if you're looking to start the season with the fairs, I think Fenland's a good place to go. Also, on Saturday, August the 3rd, Fenland will be celebrating Simcoe Day, and it will be all day from about 10 a.m. in the morning. It's in the downtown, and it's on the island where the Trent Severn is, and there will be a reenactment from the War of 1812-1814. There will be bands, and there will be giveaways and other events going on, particularly at the museum. So if you're looking for something to do on Saturday, August 3rd, try Fenland. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson?
Thank you. I'd like to send out a congratulations to Bethany's own Jill Moffat. She came and received the gold medal in the lightweight single A final for the Women's Rowing Cup for Canada. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Councillor Riley? You usually have a few things to add.
Yeah, so it's going to a hot summer, lots of things going on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recently, the Stanley Cup was in town on Saturday, and we had a gathering in the park, and there was about 300 to 400 people gathered in the Old Mill Park, and we had family and friends, and then went up Kent Street with a parade and went to the hospital where he visited a cancer patient, and then at 12:30 they went over to the Lindsay Arena where they had over 1,000 people showed up to get their picture taken with the cup. So we're very proud of Vince and his accomplishments this year. Pride in the Park was very successful last weekend. They had a number of vendors, actually more than they had last year. Classics on the Kent. I see the BI is here today. I think they believed there was over 300 cars, Charlie, I think, classics on, and all the BI members that were there. It's a wonderful one with music as well. On Saturday, August the 17th, there's going to be a tribute to the late Gordon Miller with his Passport Band. Now, I'm not sure whether that's afternoon or evening, to be honest with you, but it's on Saturday, August the 17th and closer. I'm sure there'll be something in the newspaper about it. The Pedigo Bikes official opening will be happening in July, in August. I think it's the 8th or 9th, I do for sure. Recently, we had the opening of the splash pad. The Councillor Dunn and myself were down to the Boys and Girls Club. I believe the Elgin Street Park is open now too again. It's not yet, is it, Craig? Coming soon? Okay, coming. 27th of July for the Pedigo opening. Thanks, Pat. At the Lex, they're having a bull riding rodeo, as well as a bike cross rodeo on this weekend, July 20th. They're also the Summer Circuit Area 3 Quarter Horse Show will be coming for the weekend of the summer of August 9th and 11th. They've already had 2 shows with great attendance, with people coming from all across Ontario, Quebec, parts of New York State, and it's been a great addition to our community. And there will be a meeting of the organization of the committee for the International Plowing Match of 2020 to be held at the Lex on the 25th. I believe Kathy and Don are supposed to be here, or maybe Harry's going to make, they're right over there, are going to make a presentation later on.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to echo what Councillor O'Reilly said. I had the honor of meeting Vince Dunn Saturday as well, and he's quite an outstanding young man, and congratulations to him and the St. Louis Blues for winning the Stanley Cup and sharing it with everybody here. The Downeyville renovations are proceeding at Downeyville Knights of Columbus Hall, and the first phase has been completed. They raised over $330,000, and the next phase will be looking for, their goal is $200,000 to renovate the kitchen and an accessible ramp. And donations to the hall can be made to checks made to Knights of Columbus 8911 Hall Restoration Fund, or it could be an e-transfer to Downeyville Hall at outlook.com. Password is thank you. And on August 3rd, the Downeyville Jamboree will be happening, so a family event there. Everybody welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo?
Thank you, and just like to say that we had a very successful Norland Festival this past weekend, and thank you to the city for partnering in that with us. And this coming weekend in Kirkfield is the world premiere of the movie Brotherhood. There'll be many dignitaries there. I believe the mayor's going to be in attendance, as well as myself and the Governor General and other dignitaries. And it is a big, big deal. The actors are all coming from Hollywood, the directors, and all that stuff. So we might still be some tickets. You might be able to scrounge up or scalp some. I don't know. But we're going to have a world premiere in Kirkfield this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Riley, something to add?
Yes, I just forgot, the Dunn families want to express their thanks to Lindsay Parks and Rec for the help on the weekend, and Lindsay especially, Taylor Jones and all the rest of the staff. So you can pass that on, Director Shanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any member of staff have anything they'd like to announce? Seeing nothing, we'll move into our council minutes. Special council meeting minutes of June 11th and the regular council meeting minutes of June 18th. Need a motion they be received and adopted, please. Councillor Vale and Richardson, all in favor? That's passed. Deputations, we'll move right into those. Item 10.1, deputations, I'll remind everyone, are 5 minutes. We have a petition regarding the resurfacing of Lakeland Road in Bobcaygeon, which is item 15.1 on the agenda. Mr. John Rochelle, welcome, sir. There should be a little button on that microphone. I'll get you to just push it, and then we can all hear what you have to say. Push it again. Yeah, you had it. That light will come on. There you
Now
go.
it
Thank
works. Thank you very much. No. Oh, I don't? Oh, wonderful. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is John Rochelle, and I've been a resident both as a cottager and as a full-time resident on Lakeland Road since 1954. So I know pretty well every pothole on that road at this point. The reason I am here, we submitted a petition on behalf of all the owners of Lakeland Road and also on Courtney Lane. We only had one lady that did not want to sign our petition, as she feels that if she signed it, you would raise her taxes. I assured her that would not happen. Oh, I'm not looking good already. No, quite seriously, our road, and I understand this, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate it, the roads took a real beating this winter. But ours, unfortunately, and the roads department has really made an honest attempt over the years to keep it at least drivable. I think it's past its best before date now. Engineering has been down. Roads department has made honest efforts to keep the road at least that we can drive on it with some degree of safety and without breaking legs and vehicles. I sincerely, on behalf of all of our residents there, I ask that we be put back on the budget, hopefully as soon as possible, to have something done, because it has now become a safety hazard for everyone down there. Our road, in conclusion, is a no-exit road. We only have one way out and one way in. So it makes it very, very difficult for everyone. So I would just ask again that if council could review our petition again and give it some serious, hopefully, thought, that we would end up with a favorable conclusion. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. So what we'll do, your petition is, just so you know, is on at the end of our agenda. You're certainly welcome to stay. What we'll be recommending is that your petition be referred to our engineering staff for report back in the third quarter, and that way we'll see if there's some budget we can do for next year. Our budgets are done for this year, obviously, but if we can get it on a list for next year, we've got a bunch of roads coming back, and we'll get that as part of it. So that'll be the recommendation going forward to council, and if you want to stick around, you're more than welcome to.
Wonderful, and once again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll see if there's any questions for you. Get a motion to receive, please. Councillor Yeo and Vale. Are there any questions for the deputant? I think we're good. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you for coming, sir. Appreciate it. Okay. Our next deputation is item 10.2, downtown parking strategy, regarding item 11.2 on the agenda, which is a presentation. Charlie McDonald from the Lindsay Downtown BIA Chair and Steve Podolsky from the BIA Parking Subcommittee Chair. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for your time. Good afternoon, Mayor Letham and the member of council. My name is Charlie McDonald. I'm an owner and the chair of the business Lindsay Downtown BIA. With me, I have Steve, the chair of the parking subcommittee. We appreciate the opportunity to speak here today regarding the presentation from the IBI group that you will hear later in this meeting. Their reports address parking in downtown Lindsay, Bobcaygeon, and Fenelon Falls. But of course, we'd like to speak on the study as it pertains to downtown Lindsay. I'd like to welcome the newly elected council members and give them a quick history of the BIA and the parking if you aren't already familiar.
Good afternoon. The BIA has always been very involved in the parking strategies of our geographic area. Our parking subcommittee has been working hard for many years to ensure that the parking in our downtown would allow for both residents and visitors to our area to have simple, stress-free, and accessible parking so that they could support our downtown business community. In 2014, it was brought to our attention through a study done by the city that there would be recommendations to remove our old-style parking meters and replace them with pay and display machines at a high cost to the city. With a lot of hard work and research on our part, we came to the conclusion that free parking with time limits would be our preference, and council agreed. The meters were removed, and free short-term parking, 2 hours on the street and 4 hours in the lots, and permits for long-term parking was put in place. However, the level of enforcement by the city dropped, and we found over time that abuse of the time limits were happening with no ticketing to prevent it from happening again. Through a lot of hard work, we presented a plan to enforce the parking ourselves. And a little over a year ago, again with the support of mayor and council, the BIA was able to create a position called Community Liaison to enforce parking and be a positive presence for both our businesses and visitors downtown. Our Community Liaison, Wayne English, who is here today, has been an incredible asset to our downtown. He is able to enforce the parking consistently and fairly, and collects incredible amounts of data and knows everything about what is happening out on our streets every single day.
We know that the parking is being investigated, and we've had a chance to talk with the IBA group when they conducted their PIC in the winter, and again this morning. So some of this information I have here might have changed, but I already had the speech made up, so I'm going to continue. So we understand that they have been conducting parking counts on a couple occasions so that they can collect data that will help you all make a recommendation to the future of our parking in our communities. We just wanted council to be aware that when it comes to data, we have everything. Accurate numbers that are collected by our community liaison every single day. The BIA are the ones who are out on the street talking to businesses, talking to residents and visitors, and we have an understanding of our parking in our community that no study could ever match. But our utilization counts seem to be higher than the IBI groups, and we believe, which we found out this morning, because they are including all the private-owned lots. That's why they're not. We found out that this morning, so because we only got this report a couple of days ago, but that was clarified today that they were counting the armory's parking and the library parking, which we can't use anyway because it's private, and then a lot of the private lots, they're putting their numbers in too. So, but we clarified that this morning. They're great people to talk to this morning, and we corrected that this morning, or we understood it more. But at this point, parking is being enforced daily. Our community liaison have noticed that they're actually giving out fewer tickets, especially on the street, and yet it is always busy. This is a good thing. It means people are coming downtown and businesses are successful. I hear it every day. Sales are up. And at this time, we just need more parking spaces and would welcome talks of creating additional parking assets, but fear that with the installation of paid parking, finding spaces probably wouldn't be a problem, because that was our problem before. When people had to pay, of course we had parking spaces. I fear that if we go back to the old and go to paid parking, then we won't have a problem with parking because there'll be lots. We still believe that free parking is a key to our success downtown, and that being a community with a large population of seniors and paying display meters would lose a lot of business, especially in the winter. One of the figures that the IBA group uses a lot in their studies, which you're going to hear next, I understand, is that most people are willing to walk 400 meters to their destination from where they are parked. So just to put so if anybody wants to come, I'll use to City Hall to pay the taxes, 400 meters where they'd park at the Academy Theater and then they'd walk in to pay their taxes. We don't agree that that is a good number. I don't know how many people would park down by the Academy to walk up to City Hall, which is 400 meters, to pay their tax bill. If someone is running a quick errand downtown, we do not think that this would be willing to park and then walk that distance just to go in and get $10 out of the bank. So anyway, I'm going to keep this short. So we thank you for your attention, and we look forward to the IBI's presentation. we would like to respectfully request that all involved parties that the BIA continue to be included in the process as this parking study continues. We are told that we are not going to have a seat at the table at the City Lead Steering Committee on this study, but would appreciate the opportunity to be consulted throughout. We have Pat Dunn, who sits in our parking committee, a great asset to our parking committee, and he has been there for quite some time, so he is quite knowledgeable on what we have done downtown. And we now have Patty O'Reilly that sits on comes to our meetings with the BIA. So I'd like to just thank you very much for taking the time and listening to us today.
Perfect, thank you. We got a motion to receive. We'll see if there's any questions. Councillor Seymour, Fagan, and Richardson. Are there any questions for the deputants? Seeing none, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move into presentations, but what I want to do first, I'm going to do the International Plowing Match and Rural Expo. I'm going to get you guys to come up next, okay? Because they're not going to be quite as long, so sorry to throw a wrench in your plans there, but you guys have got a pretty extensive thing, so we just want to give it the proper attention it deserves. So if I can get you guys to go next, 11.2, 2020 International Plowing Match and Rural Expo, Kathy Lasby, the Executive Director, and David Murray, the past president. And you have someone else?
Yeah, we have Richard Vivian with us today. He's our marketing communications coordinator as well.
Perfect.
And our good friend and partner back here, Harry Stoddart from the Lindsay Exhibition, is certainly here to support us.
Okay, you're up. Go ahead.
So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you. We've had certainly the red carpet has been rolled out for the International Plowing Match to come to Kawartha Lakes, and we're thrilled that we're going to be with you in 2020. So thank you to you for counselors. Your staff has been incredible, and certainly the Lindsay Exhibition have been just so supportive, so generous, and we're excited about a new concept for the International Plowing Match. So for those of you that don't know, the plowing match, oops. Oh, Richard, maybe I'll get you to do that. The plowing match started in 2017, marked our 100th anniversary, and we're pretty excited. We're in Northern Ontario for the second time in our 102-year history, so we're in the little village of Verner, and probably 99% of the people in Ontario have never heard of Verner, but when the plowing match leaves, believe me, they'll have heard of Verner. So we started in 1911, and just as a side, our first match was held in what is now Sunnybrook Hospital. So that was Sunnybrook Farms in 1913, and we've moved on from there. The match is organized by the Ontario Plowmen's Association, and we in communication and cooperation with a local committee. So you see, we've already developed our logo for 2020. We wanted to highlight Kawartha Lakes, of course, as our host community. We wanted to show the land and the water that is so much a part of you. We tried to use some of your colors as well, and we'll be launching some additional parts of that logo at our upcoming meeting. For the host community, the economic impact is really important, and I know that that's part of what you want to see. So this is a traditional picture of the plowing match. That's our tented city and our RV park. We're excited that our tented city is going to evolve into, we're going to transform the Lindsay Exhibition Grounds into our tented city, and we see so many opportunities there to showcase the exhibition grounds, because believe me, you do have the best in the province. So as I said, our economic impact is really important, and so we do an independent study, and then we did this in 2017 and 18, as well as we do our own. So we want to show you some of those numbers. So we know that from these studies that, and through the government formulas, we bring about $25 million into the area before and during, and unfortunately we can't measure what happens after, but we know that that's huge. We know that our visitors are very, very loyal to your community and to your businesses. 49.9% of our visitors travel more than 40 kilometers, so we know that they're going to stay in the community for a little while. 84% of our local residents agree that the IPM enhances their quality of life in their region. And again, that's because we can bring some dollars into the community that otherwise would not be available. And this is our event is very clean, friendly, safe, and this is projected in the results that we get from our survey. You can see the only place that we need to do a little work, and we work on this regularly, is the variety of food and beverage. And that becomes an opportunity for local foods, and that's what we always want to encourage our local food vendors. We thought it was important to find out what our visitors were going to spend in the next year. So you can see that they told us that in the next year they will spend $204 million just on farm supplies alone. So that, again, that is huge, and I truly believe and have experienced that those people will return to your community to purchase many of those. We count on lots of partners, and we're hoping that the Kawartha Lakes Council will look at as being one of our hosting partners. We've already developed a great relationship with the Lindsay exhibition, but we have some other ones that we will bring to your community as well. So these are our three presenting partners: Ontario Mutual Insurance Association, Hydro One, BMO Bank of Montreal. These are long-term contracts that we have with them, and every one of those is over $100,000 annually. So we have a really great financial base to bring to the event, no matter where we're located. This is just a picture of some of the crowds in our tented city. And of course, no event can be possible without our volunteers. And our group will change somewhat for 2020. We don't think we'll need quite as many volunteers, but they're so very important to us. And as Councillor O'Reilly mentioned, we're going to be having a meeting next week to meet with some of those volunteers and really get the ball rolling. So again, our community meeting, just for those, it's July 25th at 7:30 in the Commonwealth Building at the exhibition grounds. So some of our features, this is some of that we've listed from 2018. We have a very strong education program. We had almost 6,000 students last year. We made some Guinness World Record attempts. I don't know, I guess it was because of the community we were in Chatham, Kent, so that's where vegetable growing is huge. So we had the world's largest Caesar. And that was quite an event to put it into this huge glass that if anybody wants to buy it, we'd be happy to sell it. So we try to have something for everyone. So our Farming for the Future tent continues to take on. We purchased the Enviro Farm from the Ontario Federation of Agriculture a few years ago. And this is a really important highlight into our agricultural tent. We are also the only event in the province of Ontario where the legislature adjourns for the day so that the Premier, the leaders of the opposition, and all their MPPs can attend. And this has been an ongoing tradition, and we're thrilled to have those. We know that that's going to happen again this year, even though they're not sitting. We still expect them there. We believe the Prime Minister will be coming back again. He visited us in 2017 with his wife and family, and we do expect him back again this year. For 2019, because we're in Northern Ontario, some of our features are the West Coast Lumberjack Show. We've got the Canadian Cowgirls coming back again, and of course they've been known to participate in the Rose Bowl Parade, so that's the caliber we have. And just yesterday, we finalized an agreement. Amber Marshall, the star of CBC's Heartland, will be joining us on the Friday afternoon, so she's going to take part in the rodeo and assist there. So then we just want to show you some sights and sounds of the events. It's not just an agricultural event. It's not just a plowing event. It's something for everyone. Rural living, lifestyles are all there. So there's our Enviro Farm that I mentioned earlier. Everything is to scale, and everything is environmentally correct. Entertainment is really important to our event, and we have several different stages. We have bands and lots of features there. The Ram Rodeo is a tradition, and I've been pretty much guaranteed it will happen again in 2020 because we've got some great, Dodge sponsors that, and we've got some great dealerships in your area. And there's just some of we were fortunate in 2016 to have the RCMP musical ride. As I mentioned, rural living is another aspect of our event. There's everything there that you could possibly want, from gators to sheds to landscaping to supplies to flags to outdoor furnaces, you name it, we have it. And lifestyles is another really important component of our event. I want to especially mention the quilting competition that we have. We have a quilt block challenge that can go all around the world, and then we have about 100 quilts that will be on display. And luckily this year, in 2020, we're going to have put it in a building and rather a tent, so we're pretty excited about that. We're also, each year, we're going to follow the tradition. Each year there's a plowing match cookbook presented, and we're going to be, we're in the process of making that right now, so if any of you want to send in your favorite recipes, please send them to Richard at marketingplowingmatch.org. It will be a keepsake for your community and for the IPM. So education is another really strong factor in our event. So we, as I mentioned earlier, we 6,000 to 8,000 to 10,000 students every year. And we want to tell them the true story of agriculture and food, and we think that it's our responsibility to do that. So we've expanded our Agmazing food farm, and we have practically all of the commodities involved in that, and they bring their message to our students. And you can see how thrilled they are. So and we changed it from a sandbox to a corn box, and boy, those kids loved it. And of course, we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for the plowing competition. So we have we can have up to 200 plowing enthusiasts from the age of 10 to probably 85 is the oldest, and they do come from throughout Ontario primarily, but also from Quebec, the United States, and we have had a couple from Europe. So our plow lands will be on neighboring farms around the exhibition grounds, as well as we'll be looking at parking fields because we know that we won't have enough on the exhibition grounds. An event of our age, obviously, there's a lot of tradition. We have an opening day parade. Again, we know that it's going to go around the perimeter of the fairgrounds, and we also have opening ceremonies, and that's when certainly our Premier, our Prime Minister, whomever might be there, will certainly be on hand to take part in that. Our Queen of the Furrow program is also really important. This young lady is from Oxford County, and she's traveling the province to promote the IPM, but also to promote agriculture. And the lady that's chosen this year will be your representative for Kawartha Lakes, and will certainly be promoting the IPM, agriculture, and Kawartha Lakes. And the final tradition that we have is the passing of the flags. So here you see two happy landowners. They're the one on the right with the happy hat. He was the 2018 host, and the one on the left is the happy 2018, and the one on the right is the current one. So lots of interaction between those two. So we're here today as our initial visit with you. I think we'll have many more, but we would like to talk to you about partnering. Some things that we need, and these are in-kind things. So we know that we need to have some culverts put in for the fields that will be for the plowing and the parking. We've talked to the Lindsay exhibition, and we know that their system for garbage and recycling and for gray water, black water, and for water, but we're not sure that their capacities are going to be great enough with our attendance. So we're hoping that should there be extras needed, that we could count on the municipality to help us with those. We're hoping that you'll waive our building permit fees, because we will, in addition to the buildings that are there, we will put up quite a number of tents, both from our committees and from our exhibitors. We may need to put snow fence around some of the perimeter fields, and we're hoping that some of your work staff would be available to help us. We need to work with you about fire, paramedics, police. Throughout all of this, our number one priority of this event is that it be safe. So we want to work with all of your teams to make sure that happens. Signage is important to us. We want the world to know that we're going to be hosting the event in Kawartha Lakes. So we're hoping that we can work with you on some signage permits and make sure that the world knows. And finally, we would like to talk to you at some point, not today, about a financial contribution as part of your sponsorship partnership. So I've tried to go through this quickly because I know you've got a very full agenda. There's so much more we want to share with you. We certainly hope that you will come to our community meeting next Thursday. We've got lots we want to share with you, and lots of things that we'll develop. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Our good friend Dave Murray here was going to do part of this presentation, but on the way up, he got a migraine, and he's just trying to get through the day. So please, he certainly was prepared to do part of this presentation, but he just can't right now.
You did quite great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's very exciting. We'll see if there's any questions. So we'll get a motion to receive. Councillor Dunn and Yo. Do you have a question, Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. I like most of your asks. Most of them I don't understand, as in I'll need a lot more detail before I ever move down that road. So
Absolutely.
hopefully once we get to that stage, your people will talk to our people and we'll come up with a plan.
Absolutely. And we did have a great meeting, the Friday morning before the long weekend, and that tells me how dedicated your staff are, because and your counselors, we had a room full of your people, and we talked about some of the logistics, and we all got to know one another. So we've done the first step, but we know there's lots more.
Councillor Riley?
Yeah, just further, thank you for coming today. I hope they just come to Kawartha Lakes didn't create the migraine. But anyways, or you won't have to sit through for the rest of the day either, but it's a tremendous economic tourism attraction, and I say, as Mayor said in the meeting as well, certainly we're looking forward to working with you, and we get more details, and it's certainly an exciting event to be hosting in Kawartha Lakes.
Thank you. We're pretty excited about it, and we're excited about this new concept of working with the fairgrounds. We have never done that before, but we think that the possibilities are endless, and we think that we can help Lindsay Exhibition by profiling them to the rest of the province and beyond, who haven't had the luck of being at the exhibition like I have.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great partnership. Thank you. Might I suggest that we receive the presentation and refer to staff to quantify some of the options, and that be referred to our 2020 budget decision unit? So when we have some more information, can we make that part of the, I know that they've already met with some of our staff and they're going back and forth, so that'll give us a better idea of what we're looking at, if you're okay with that. So we have that motion. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you very much for coming today. Appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you.
Our pleasure. We'll see you next Thursday.
You bet. Thank you. Okay, we'll move right into our item 11.1, back to 11.1, our downtown parking strategy. Thank you, gentlemen, for your patience. I know you're all excited about the plowing match now, so that should, you want to talk about some parking issues, there's your challenge. So this should tie in nicely. So it's Adam Found, our Manager of Corporate Assets, and Peter Richards, Associate Director, Practice Lead, Transportation Engineering with the IBI Group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Indeed, we are excited to have that event in Kawartha Lakes, and I don't think it'll affect downtown parking a whole lot, at least not for a long period of time, so I don't think we're going to have to worry about it a whole lot, but it is a great event to have. So today is an opportunity for staff and IBI Group to have a touch point with council on the downtown parking strategy. So council may recall that it approved funding in the amount of $100,000 for this study back in April 2018. And you'll likely also recall that the need for the study was first identified in 2011 as part of our transportation master plan, which looked at parking through a general lens, but identified the need to look at the issue more particularly and with more depth. And that's really what the purpose of this study is. And again, it's touching on the downtown areas of Lindsay, Bobcaygeon, Fenelon Falls. And as of about November last year, we retained IBI Group to conduct this study. And the study is being led by a group of staff that form a steering committee for it. And already we've had some parking utilization surveys done. We've had public consultations, stakeholder consultations, and really now we're about at the midpoint of the study process. And so it's a really good opportunity to now touch base with council to not only give an update as to where the study is at currently, but also to obtain some feedback from council, perhaps even direction from council. It's really, in a sense, a consultation session with council. And so those are really the two main goals of today's session. So without, I guess, further ado, I'll turn things over to Peter Richards, who is the project manager on the IBI side on the IBI side of the project, and he'll walk you through a presentation and some slides.
Great. Thank you, Adam, Mayor and Council, for having me today. As Adam said, I'm Peter Richards from IBI Group. We've worked on several parking strategies similar to Kawartha Lakes. We've done some in Peterborough, St. Catharines, Whitby, Oshawa, Tillsonburg. So this isn't our first kick of the can, and this isn't a big experiment. So we do have experience, towns big and small. Myself, I am the president of the parking committee for the Institute of Transportation Engineers. If you're not familiar with that, it's a member organization of 15,000 members across 90 countries, so I head up the parking committee for that organization. Is this my clicker here? Yes, no? Perfect. I do acknowledge there are a lot of slides. Once we get to the graphs, I will go through those quickly because I myself find them boring, so I imagine if you're not in the industry, not as exciting, but feel free to ask questions at the end with regards to them. They're just included mainly for background purposes. So the presentation outline today will go over what the scope is and the objectives, our methodology, what the existing parking supply is, essentially how many parking spaces there are, the consultation we've done to date, some of our preliminary recommendations, which are by no means final, just some things that we're looking at based on the data we've received to date, and some of the next steps. So the scope and objectives, the study will identify opportunities and needs for parking in the core areas of Lindsay, Bobcaygeon, and Fenland Falls. Some of the key objectives include determining if the parking supply is adequate in the future, what are the stakeholder concerns, reviewing parking service delivery models, and meeting growth-related parking demands. So the methodology, and I won't get into great detail here, but parking surveys was a key part of that, and that's been supplemented by data provided by both the City of Kawartha Lakes and the BIA, which is great. So we've counted how many parking spaces there are and essentially how busy they are. We went out and did one weekday and one weekend. We went out in the winter in December. The spring, which has 2018, but it's actually 2019. We went out last month in June on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And we have summer counts coming up over the next few weeks. We reviewed background documents, official plans, zoning bylaws, economic background developments, items such as that were provided to us, just so we can fully understand everything that's gone into how the city has arrived at where it is now, and just to make sure any recommendations align with planning documents and engineering documents. For future parking needs, up there it says 10-year horizon scenario, but we've been asked to adjust it to 2031 to align with other future planning horizons for studies, which is an easy adjustment for us. One of the things that's important for the study is to target utilization threshold of 85 to 90%. So what that means is if you have a parking lot that has 100 spaces, industry standard is it gets busy around when there's 85 or 90 vehicles in there. So it's 85th to 90th percentile. It doesn't mean it's full. It doesn't mean there aren't 10 to 15 spaces. It's just when it starts to feel full and people kind of glance in it and look elsewhere. So that's been used as our threshold when we're talking about if a lot is full for the study. So under future parking needs, just determine what the patterns are currently, what they're going to be like in the future by looking at population growth, employment opportunities, items such as that, and any developments that are replacing parking lots or using up more parking. The three last main steps of the methodology are coming up with guiding principles and general strategies. We'll develop 10 guiding principles. They'll be based on discussions with city staff, the background documents, and best practices reviews of similar municipalities, as well as studies that we've completed parking strategies in. And we'll use these general strategies to achieve objectives identified in the guiding principles. We'll come up with a service model. This is to align with the strategies and the principles. It'll look at things such as parking capacity, how busy it is, the asset portfolio, the operations, and how it should be governed. And the last step is public consultation. So public and stakeholder consultation, which we've already started and it's ongoing throughout for the most part, and an online survey and crowdsourcing map. So essentially, to summarize that, IBI Group's been plopped in to have an objective review looking at multiple angles. There's data, the data provided by the BIA, stakeholders, everyone has, an agenda, for lack of a better term, not like a James Bond villain agenda, but everyone has, BIA, it's in their goals are in their acronym. So the public, they have comments, just making sure it's data-driven and objective, and all the angles are being looked at. So that's what we're doing, as well as looking at best practices, industry research, lots of publications out there. The High Cost of Free Parking by Donald Shoup will eschew why free parking can be bad. So items such as that are being explored. So 3 communities are being studied: Lindsay, Fenland Falls, Bobcaygeon. On the screen is a map with super tiny numbers if you're standing back here that outline how many parking spaces are in each parking lot. So our study area, up to Peel on the north, Russell on the south, Sussex to the west, and you can see the boundaries on the east. So we looked at a mix of municipal parking lots and private business parking lots, as well as anything available on the street. Just to understand if there's spillover from private lots, are they parking in municipal lots, or can they park on the street, and vice versa. Just to understand the relationship, how these 3 on-street, off-street, public, private, they all operate in tandem. So the beginning of 25 slides or so of graphs. I'm not going to drill down in detail, but to summarize, and feel free to ask me questions at the end, and I'll touch on a point on each slide. But essentially, what these slides summarize are: to date, we've done 2 surveys: winter 2018 and spring 2019. We've done weekday and weekend. We've done on-street and off-street. And you put all that math together, and that's the next billion slides. So what we're trying to show on each graph is the capacity of the overall parking system, what the 85th percentile is of that parking system, which is, by parking system I mean the sum of all the off-street spaces or all the on-street spaces. And then in the red line on the graph, you can see how the weekday changes every half hour. So the way the parking is collected is a team of people walk around and count how many parking spaces are block by block or lot by lot every half hour, and that's how you arrive at those very precise figures. It's not just one time a day. And the way this is presented here is the summation of all the lots or all the streets. In this particular case, it's on street, so it's showing the summation of the streets. So we do have this lot by lot, which we're not showing. We're just showing how busy each street is. So without further ado, so this is showing Lindsay on street. At the very peak time, if you sum up everything, weekday is about 79% busy across all the streets. Weekend is 58%. Off street, the takeaway is that nothing on the whole goes over 85%, but individual lots do. So is there enough capacity within walking distance to find an appropriate amount of parking elsewhere is a key takeaway. So what this figure shows here is a 400-meter walking radius. Our research has shown, well, not our research, but research in the industry has shown people are willing to walk 300 to 400 meters to find parking, essentially, to their destination. And this is small town, big town. I walked 600 meters today from the Cat and Fiddle lot up Cambridge, but that was my own choosing, practice what I preach, I suppose. So what this radius is showing is the lots in red are the ones that are theoretically over 85 percentile, and it's showing all the lots that do have capacity within that walking distance. So it's a theoretical exercise of showing, do you want to build a parking garage, or do you want to find a technique to nudge people to, hey, there's an empty lot a block away? That's essentially what these next 20 figures are showing. When we surveyed Lindsay on the weekend off the street, it wasn't very busy, 43%. In the spring, a little busier. This is on street in Lindsay, off street in Lindsay. Again, weekday peaked at 68%, weekend peaked at 41%. Several lots in Lindsay were over 85% individually, the ones shown in red, and this is just showing that the lots in yellow can accommodate the ones in red. We'll move ahead to Fenland Falls. So the study area, again, shown on the map, through discussions with stakeholders, consultation and city staff, the original study area has been pushed west to include more on-street parking, essentially the western boundaries of Bond, Francis, and Oak, and then the municipal lots on the end or the northwest. So those weren't captured in the winter surveys, but those have been captured in the spring surveys, and they will be captured again in the summer surveys. Fenland Falls, when we did the winter survey, the snapshot as a whole, pretty close to that 85th percentile at the busiest times, and they stay pretty busy for most of the day based on what our survey shown. On the weekend and weekday off-street, not as busy. So that's generally expected. On-street, people want convenience, don't necessarily want to walk far if they don't have to. Especially if parking is free, there's no motivation to find parking elsewhere, so people will try to park as close to their destination as can. That's logical, unless you're me and decided to walk 600 meters in 36-degree heat in a suit. Fenland Falls in the winter, off-street parking, again, not very busy. And then moving on to spring, on-street wasn't as busy as winter, didn't get much busier in 57%. One lot was over 85%, and this shows that you can pretty much walk across Fenland Falls pretty quickly, and lots of available parking a block or two away. Same with the weekend. And Bob Cajun. Study area shown on the screen. Again, like Fenland Falls, we extended it based on some feedback or based on areas where we were just missing a block or it made sense that it actually was within the area of influence. So the south end and the southeastern end of the study area on King, we added some on-street bays there. In December, not very busy on the street, both weekday and weekend. Off the street, a little busier in Bob Cajun in the winter, but not anything close to capacity. Visual representation of that. Spring surveys, perhaps unsurprisingly, a little busier, but at the busiest times, there was still parking within the parking system that was available. So weekday, 52%, weekend, 70%. Off-street, not as busy. Looks like there was one lot that was technically one vehicle over 85 percentile. Again, that doesn't mean like someone can't find parking. It's just showing a planning exercise that they could park half a block away and there's 13 available spaces there. So, in summary, if you look at a snapshot of the busiest time on the weekday or weekend, parking didn't exceed the 85th percentile. That's not to say there's not concentrated areas where lots are over 85%, even at 100%. The trick is understanding what solutions are available and what costs come with these solutions and what's palpable based on the data, best practices, stakeholders, residents, items such as that. So speaking of public consultation, we did consultation, both online survey and what we called a crowdsourcing map. So essentially it was a map where you could drop a pin saying items such as, I had trouble finding parking here. I think there should be more accessible parking here, items such as that. And then we can create a hotspots map to see what the trends are. Essentially tries to take anecdotal evidence and see what trends there are. The survey is online. I believe there's hard copies, but through discussions with the BIA, we're just going to make sure that there are hard copies available at key locations and businesses just to make sure we get the maximum number of responses because we're interested in all ages, demographics, online, and hard copies. So we did hold public meetings in March. I was hoping for July when we won this project, but March it was, which is also still lovely. So we were in Lindsay March 5th, Fenland Falls March 6th, and Bob Cajun March 7th. So I'll go over the key findings, and then I'll break it down community by community. So a lot of stuff we heard was there's no available parking spaces, especially in the summer. There's poor wayfinding signage to direct you to public parking lots. There's poor wayfinding signage if you have a long vehicle or a boat, where to park, things like that. There's a lack of proactive enforcement, and it's inconsistent bylaw requirements with regards to cash in lieu between the communities. So those are some of the things we heard. From the surveys, the online surveys that we have done to date, some of the feedback we heard, and we didn't summarize every single question here, but some of the key findings to date on about 200 surveys. Majority of people prefer to park off-street. Majority of people find the parking prices fair or bargained. This is the ones that are off-street, obviously, for the daily and the permits. Nearly half would not support an increase in parking prices. More than half would not like to see a parking garage or structure built. This is in Lindsay. More than half would not support on-street paid parking. And we asked people, how far would you be willing to walk? 0 to 200 meters, 200 to 400, 400 to 8 above. And about a third said 0 to 200 meters. 40% said they'd walk up to 400 meters. 19% said they'd walk 400 to 8, and 5% said they'd walk greater than 800 meters. Some comments that we heard, and I think these are verbatim for some of the highlights. If employees and owners of businesses didn't park in front of their stores, there would be a lot more on-street parking on Kent Street for shoppers. Signage is inconsistent and poorly located. I can drive around the block several times. Lots are all full. It is terrible. I tend to then head to the mall. Parking garages are ugly. They don't align with historic downtown and would detract from tourism appeal. It's difficult to find parking spots on Kent Street for people with walking problems. So, like I said, I've done a lot of these studies. The main three issues are how far you have to walk, signage, and paying for parking, and surprise, surprise, this is no different. So we'll use some of those solutions, best practices, data to try to reconcile as many of these issues as possible. Moving on to Fenland Falls, similar themes. Majority of people park off-street. They would not support a parking fee similar to downtown Lindsay. More than half are satisfied with the overall parking experience. Most would not like to see a parking garage structure built. I think it was about 80% said that. Most would not support on-street paid parking. And shorter walking distances for this survey, 47% said they wouldn't walk more than 200 meters. Interestingly, 21% said they'd walk 400 to 800, so a little further than some of the findings on Lindsay. Some of the feedback or comments we received online. I use handicap parking and there's not enough and it's never enforced. More public parking and signage is required. Street parking is not optimal. There are empty lots that could be used for local employee parking, as many don't have adequate parking, as there are multiple businesses and tenants as well in the immediate downtown area. Bringing back on-street paid parking would not be satisfactory at all. Last but not least, Bob Cajun, again, majority park off-street. Most would not support a parking fee similar to Lindsay. More than half are satisfied with the parking experience. Most would not like to see a parking structure. Most would not support on-street paid parking. And further walking distances than any other place. 36% said they'd walk up to 400 meters, 29% up to 800, and a small percentage over 800. Some comments, no parking spots most days. Usually a side street has a spot. I feel too many store or office workers park on the street taking up valuable space. Paid parking should only be in the summertime. Active enforcement would be better than paid parking. So a lot of similar themes, a lot of things you've probably heard or thought yourself, a lot of things I hear from every single study. So it's good that there's a general voice, at least to add to some of the objective data and best practices that we're looking at. So based on all that, there are some preliminary recommendations that are going to be explored further once we receive the summer survey data, and then once we go back out to the public. We broke it down into 4 themes: improving parking infrastructure, improving signage and wayfinding, increasing public parking supply, and improving parking management. So some of these preliminary ideas are look at some of the existing lots and see if they can be reconfigured or paved, or at least the parking spaces delineated. Some of the gravel lots, or some of them are not optimally painted or designed, so that you could increase the number of the parking supply based on simple quick wins like that. Investigate the impacts of on-street paid parking. What would that mean in tandem with the rest of these recommendations? What are the impacts? Where does it push people? One of the questions we asked, which we didn't summarize, was would you walk further for paid parking, and over 65% said yes, almost 2/3 said they would walk further to their destination if parking was free. So, some places have paid parking in the core, free on the outskirts. Essentially, it's a tactic of, can you redistribute existing parking supply or demand in a more efficient way that doesn't cost $10 million to build a garage? Are people willing to do this, or are they not? Is it a demographic thing? Are there other barriers? So that's something that we'll investigate. Improving signage and wayfinding, so adding a proper wayfinding signage. We had directions to one of the lots and we drove right past it because there was no sign actually directing us in. Some towns have names and numbers to lots, so catchy names will help you, instead of the one at the corner of A and B Street, having some names and some nomenclature, and you can even dress it up with a BIA or have a contest or something. There's lots of creative things that can be done. Create a trailer and boat map and routing plan. So certain streets you can't, especially in Fenland Falls, you get to the end, you can't really turn around or navigate your boat. You don't want them driving through certain parts of the town. So if there was like some towns have truck route master plans, similar idea, just to direct people straight to those lots and store them there in a more formal manner. Increase public parking supply. So this will be explored to see if there's additional off-street parking requirements and where that can be. We've been approached by some landowners saying, hey, you can buy a parcel of land off of us. So I've spent your money for next year already. No, so we're taking that under consideration, looking at where the lots are busy and where it strategically might make sense. Also improving parking management, active bylaw enforcement. Again, we've heard a complaint and the BIA also spoke on this in terms of can bylaw enforcement be proactive or more staff to actually make sure the parking turnover and duration is achieved. Last item on this list is fixed cash and lieu fees. Just looking at, is the amount enough? Should it be higher? Whether other municipalities and communities paying? Where does this money go? Items such as that are going to be explored. So some of the key takeaways: existing parking supply as a whole is within the acceptable threshold based on the winter and spring surveys, although some lots may operate over this threshold. There's available parking in another lot within a 400-meter, 5-minute walking radius. There seems to be lots of employee parking issues in terms of location, duration. There's existing wayfinding and enforcement issues. The majority of the public would not support paid parking or the construction of a parking garage parking structure. And then the online survey and also the hard copies that we'll ensure get distributed. We're collecting those to help feed the data process until the end of August. So another key takeaway are there's trade-offs, obviously. There's no utopia that exists that everyone's going to pat me on the back and carry me out of the room on their shoulders like the Stanley Cup last weekend. That's not going to happen, although I keep dreaming about that for every project. Free parking, enforcement, parking spaces, these all cost money. And the money has to come from somewhere. You can't just kick it down and hope, something comes of nothing. So everyone has, every group, every, a stakeholder in this city as well, there's all interest, and it's just making sure with an objective lens, what makes sense, what do other places do, how can this operate, and how will it function? And if half the people are happy and half the people are mad, then we've done our job. So those are some of the key takeaways. Last slide, or second last slide, thank you for bearing with me. Next steps, surveys later this month. We'll look at the future conditions. We'll come back to the 3 communities in October or November to do public information centers. We'll issue a final report towards the end of the year, and you'll see my pretty face back here in January or February to present the final report. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. See if there's any questions for you. Appreciate the presentation. Get a motion to receive, please. Councillor Elmsley and O'Reilly. Councillor Elmsley, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you for the presentation. I had questions about cash and lieu. Currently, I believe in the city of Kawartha Lakes, only 2 municipalities have cash and lieu, and that would be Lindsay and Fenland Falls, and they're not consistent. There's a different price charged in both communities. Can you tell me the experience you have in other communities, whether cash in lieu is charged or it isn't? Or is it part of development fees, or is it part of BIA assessments, or how does that work?
Right. Through you, Mr. Mayor, different communities handle this differently. Some places have cash in lieu, some don't. Some have them consistent, some don't. As part of this, we are looking at what rates, what are other places doing. Burlington, for example, downtown Burlington, they have a parking levy that the BIA pays into. So they have a public garage that the businesses park at. And that's every year, all the businesses contribute to this, and they look at, do they need to expand? What are the costs of maintenance and things like that? New businesses coming in, and they all contribute to a downtown parking levy. Not a lot of places do that, but Burlington is one of them. We did a parking strategy there, so I'm aware of that. King Township, where we did another parking study, 3 communities as well. 2 had it, different rates, another one had it, and some, it's very political, which is in terms of what's the cash in lieu doing? Is it building parking spaces, or is it collecting money that disappears into the ether? You have to make sure that money is going towards something, and it often isn't a great tool sometimes, in that the cost of cash in lieu is so low that you can't build something with it. So we're going to review some of the best practices with regards to that and make a recommendation that aligns with the points you're making.
Thank you, and just further to that, I know that there is a feeling that when you charge cash in lieu, and it's not charged everywhere, it's a disadvantage to those communities, because if a business comes in to open up and they have to pay anywhere up $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 to on top of their startup charges, that it would be cheaper for them to go to one of the communities that doesn't charge cash in lieu. So I would think that we have to be consistent with it, but because we only have 2, the right idea might be not to charge it at all. So I'll be interested to see what you come back with.
Great, thank you.
We'd just make it 0 across the board, and then it wouldn't be an issue, would it? That would make a lot of sense. Councillor Riley, go ahead.
It's like utopia.
Thank you. I was just wondering, I saw your key findings. Was there anything that you saw at the First Nations that were interested in Lindsay at this time that was unique to Lindsay, that is, than other municipalities of a similar size?
Through you,
Was it
Mr.
too early to
Mayor.
predict?
No, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing that jumps out at me. The one comment that the BIA has passed along is the demographic, older demographic. I wouldn't say we haven't come across this. We did a study in Tilsonburg, and the 400 meters walking distance. They suggested a shorter walking distance for some areas to find suitable parking. So that was something that we have experience with in terms of looking at, finding available parking within 200-meter walking distance to accommodate that demographic. But other than that, there hasn't been an issue in Lindsay specifically that is unique to the other dozen or so studies I've done recently.
Follow up for me. I forget, there was a president in your presentation, or not today, but another presentation. You mentioned there was one town, it wasn't Schaumburg, but it was over that way. Tottenham, perhaps it was, that they actually put off-street parking. Most of it was off-street parking, and they didn't want the main street so busy, so everybody had to walk by all the stores instead of just coming in. And
Yes.
parking in front of the one specific store.
Yes, that was Schaumburg. Good memory. It was the parking. There was a large parking lot at the north end of the town, and the BIA was complaining that it was too far to walk from there to their shops. And I had suggested, well, wouldn't you want someone to not drive past, to walk past and see all your shops? Because everyone's parking on street all day right in front of their shops, mainly employees. So they were running into the issue was there was no turnover. It was just the employees taking up the prime parking in front of their shops. So they eventually relented or to let people park in that. It was an old community arena that was going underused, and they're trying to figure out what to do with the parking, and I suggested that be part of the solution. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
Have you ever had a community that, as a result of some of the parking challenges we have, that might have their main street for handicapped and seniors only, and sort of push some of the younger, more mobile people onto the back streets, but sort of allow only? Have you ever come up with that concept of seniors only sort of on the main street parking, and everybody else has to, instead of paying, and you pay on the main street and you push everybody off, but allow those who don't have the mobility to park up close, and everybody else has to walk a little bit? We keep talking about creating an active community, and what better way to do it than, have some people walk a few blocks?
I haven't come across a study that's been 100% accessible spaces only. One suggestion has been adding more, which we did in the King Township study on street. The disadvantage is that statistically, and I don't have the stats for Kawartha Lakes, but statistically the spaces go underutilized. So if they're designated for one use and they're not used at, say, 8 p.m. if there was paid parking at 8 p.m., for example, but later in the day, it may be underutilized. So maybe a greater mix. But to answer your question, not necessarily on street, but one of our off-street recommendations for Tilsonburg was to have parking guidance signs that were similar to the expectant mother or families. It was to have accessible needs, or I think we specifically just called it senior parking. I can't remember what the politically correct term we landed on. I think we had a lot of back and forth on that, but I think that's what we ended with. But it wasn't enforced by law. It was advisory. So I guess socially regulated, but not like that. But yeah, there are options. You could have a greater mix, but I personally would suggest not having 100% of the designation.
Yeah, I'm not saying accessible. I'm saying accessible and senior or something, to have a few different groups. But I'm just throwing it out.
Yeah, I have not come across that.
Perfect. Okay, we have no more questions. We have a motion to receive. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we look forward to seeing you back here again with some.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so that's our deputations and presentations. We'll move into Committee of the Whole, business arising from Committee of the Whole. So we have our three motions. I'm just going to go through them one at a time. We'll ratify them. So item 12.1.1, CW 219-152, that report WWW 219-010, review of the mandatory connection bylaw 214-255 be received, and that staff be directed to report back in September 2019 with options for amending the mandatory connection bylaw to provide relief from mandatory connections for the 134 properties not currently connected to municipal services up to and including complete exemption from the bylaw. And I think that covers what we talked about. Will you move that, Councillor Dunn and Councillor Yeo? Any questions, comments? All in favor? That's passed. Item 12.2.2, CW 219-154, the high water bill adjustment policy review be received, and that the suggested revisions to the policy from slides 10 and 11 of the July 16th, 2019 presentation by Director Stover on the high water bill adjustment policy be brought forward to Council in September 2019, namely Section 8, obvious or hidden leaks. Adjustments only be considered for instances where high consumption results from a circumstance beyond the property owner's control. All property types will be considered, written notification within 30 days of bill date, maximum period adjusted 1 billing cycle 3 months. Section 12, unexplained sudden large increases, suggest to remove this section. Section 14, the adjustment cap, limit the adjustments for all property types to a maximum of $1,500. I think that's what we talked about. So will you move that as well, Councillor Dunn? Second by Councillor Elmsley. All in favor? That's passed. And the last one was item 12.2.3, CW 219-156, that report RD 219-004, the seasonal level of service policy review be received, and that winter maintenance to Folsom Crescent and Mink Alley be supplied until such time as the full report on the roads maintenance database comes back to Council. Councillor Yeo, you'll move that, seconded by Councillor Elmsley. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The date for coming back to Council have we established a date, or?
The director had said when the full report of all the inventory is back, then it'll come back with all the roads. So we're just implementing this
Okay.
until that comes back.
So it's not coming back in August?
No,
Thank you.
absolutely not. Not of this year. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a move and a seconder. All in favor? That's passed. That's committee of the whole. Planning Advisory Committee. There's no correspondence. There were no extractions from planning. Pretty straightforward. Councillor O'Reilly, you'll move that the minutes
Be received and as printed.
receive and the recommendations included section 13.3 of the agenda be adopted.
Yes.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Vale. Questions? All in favor? That's passed. We'll go over to consent. So extractions from the consent agenda. I have 14.1.2, the Environmental Advisory Committee Work Plan, Councillor Ashmore. 14.1.3, the Information Report on Bill 108, Councillor Ashmore. I have 14.1.13, Request for Citywide Speed Reduction, Councillor Dunn. I have 14.2.3, the memo regarding Thurstonia Docks is extracted by myself. And 14.2.4, the memo regarding level of service for Gillis, Killarney Bay Road, and Grove Road has been extracted by myself. Any other extractions from the consent? Seeing none, Councillor Seymour Fagan, you have that? I sure can. 14.1.2, 14.1.3, 14.1.13, 14.2.3, and 14.2.4. Do you have a seconder? Sorry, Councillor Elmsley. Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. Let's, if it's okay, Councillor Dunn, I know Joe over there has to leave fairly shortly, so let's do this request for citywide speed reduction first, that extraction. 14.1.3, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion. I move the report be received, that the City of Kawartha Lakes adopt option number 3, which is reducing speed limits for the urban settlement areas, that it be referred to communications for an educational program to be placed out, that it be placed in the 2020 budget for staged information implementation starting January 2020. And if I get a seconder, I'll explain it.
Councillor Yeo, you'll second that. Thank you.
Okay, this has been an ongoing concern. I really struggled with it. It's probably one of the best reports I've read because it anticipated questions that I may have wanted to ask, and it actually included a much wider area than what I anticipated with my original motion. So it's an absolutely excellent report. So then I was stuck with, well, do I just keep it short and do the areas that directly impact myself and a couple other councillors such as Bob Cajun, Fenelon Falls, and Lindsay, or do we open up the whole package? And I elected to go with the entire package simply because the people in Bethany and in Woodville are just as entitled to protection as the people in Lindsay. So that's why I opened up the whole package. And if somebody that represents that area that finds they don't want that and wants to make a friendly amendment to my motion, I'll be more than happy to accept that. Anyway, when I'm going through the report, this has been an ongoing, and it doesn't matter where you go. I've got complaints from everywhere, and I just think it's time. I've got feedback from people that read the Calgary report. It's been in effect there for 4 years, and it works. There is an educational process that we need to think about implementing. People have to be made aware, and what my vision, if you want to say there is a vision, even the negative feedback I get is all about enforcement. Now, I was actually working on the road back in the days when they introduced seat belts. And that was a brand new idea that public was totally against. And we passed the law, the provincial government passed the law, and it took a while to implement it. And it was done by police officers stopping cars and saying, "Where's your seatbelt?" And we gave warnings for 5, 6, 7 months, and then we hammered them. And people changed their mind and they started to wear their seatbelts. We hardly know anybody nowadays that doesn't wear a seatbelt. It'll be the same thing with this. We'll get as much negative feedback as we do positive feedback. But people will learn to drive 40. Now, the advantage to doing it, of course, for me, it's always been the kids and the seniors, because I'm a senior, by the way. So it's always been the kids and the seniors, and they feel unsafe with cars whipping by them. It also applies to our strategic plan in an active community, because I've been approached by cyclists that say they feel vehicles are driving too fast. From an enforcement point of view, when we've had police officers go out and run speed traps and so on and so forth, the average speed is 58. Now, if the average speed is 58, that means there's a heck of a lot of cars going a lot more than 58, because there's a whole bunch of cars turning onto the road where we have our radar going 20. So if the average speed is 58, there's a whole ton of vehicles going a heck of a lot faster. Police officers will not issue a ticket for 8 kilometers over the speed limit, but they'll issue tickets all day long for 18 over. And that's going to change. That's going to change people's habits. And then, thank God, we have a whole bunch of Dudley Do-Rights out there. And they'll obey the speed limit from the day that sign is put up. And that by itself is going to slow the traffic down. So I think it's a great report. I think it's a solid motion, and I seek your support. Thank you.
I have a question, and I think it's for you. Can you just, and whether you or Joe, just clarify for me, is it option 3?
Option 3 is the one that's everybody.
It's
Through
not.
you, Mr.
It's
Mayor,
not.
it's option 2.
Option 2 is everybody.
I wanted to verify that. That's what you meant.
I meant option 2.
You meant option 2. Okay, that's where my confusion was, because I'm reading this.
Thank you,
Option
Joe.
3 is only the 5 larger areas.
Okay, then I misread it, yeah.
So you want everything which is figure 2 in the chart, correct, Joe? That's figure 2 that goes with option 2.
Through you, that's correct.
Perfect, thank you. Are there any, do you want to speak to it, Councillor Yeo? You seconded it?
Yeah, briefly. Besides the condition of our roads, my second complaint I get on them all the time is the speed people travel on them. I keep telling them that's why we leave the potholes there, but they don't buy it. So I think this is a good step, and it's going to help the people in Coboconk and Norland, and because the traffic coming in off of Provincial Highway, which is our main street, onto the side streets, these people don't have enough area to slow their body, their car, and their mind down before they get to the cottage. So hopefully with some enforcement, they'll learn. Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Riley?
Maybe through to the mover. Councillor Dunn, did you read Dave Martha's report? The police, and he didn't seem as optimistic that was really going to be that, my interpretation. Would you have any comment on that? That was all.
I read Dave Murtha's report. I've also had feedback from CPAC. The feedback I received from feedback is negative. They say it's just going to generate a whole bunch of revenue, and I think that's too bad. I think they should get off their butts and enforce the law the way it's written, and so that's their job, is to enforce it, and hopefully they'll see the light and enforce it. So yeah, I've got negative feedback from police officers. That's still no excuse for them not to do their job.
Thank you. Do you have a copy of the motion? Do you have it written down?
I just wrote the highlights. That is the option number 2.
Because we don't have it. He went through it pretty quick, so, and maybe they can just, for clarification. Do you want to, let me just clarify it? So is everybody, if everybody's clear on the option 2, the urban, all designated community speed zones, right, is what you're looking for. And a communication strategy as part of the education place in 2020, budget for staged implementation starting in January 2020. Does that give you direction that you're looking for, Joe, as far as getting this started? Is there any concerns on your end?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my only concern is that whatever department is in charge of developing an education program has enough time to consult with us and do something.
We've got some pretty sharp communications ladies sitting up there.
I'm sure it is.
They're up there
Yeah.
going, no problem, we can do this.
Okay.
All right.
Because this was, I saw this report as step one of the process. If you want to jump right into it, let's get to it, and we'll start consulting with getting an education program going. And also Public Works with installing the signs. That's a whole nother ballgame right there.
Well, I think, and unless I'm wrong, the councilors covered it with the phase in, right? I mean, we're not expecting every sign to be up in January 2020, right? So pick certain areas and where it's realistic and sort of roll out the communication and roll out, I think, the phase in of what it is we're trying to do, I think is your intention, correct?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll work phasing that in, whether we look at contracting it out or internally with Public Works, because it does involve quite a few signs and within these communities, and then starting in January to timing with winter conditions and implementing during frost and locate. So there's a few logistical things, but we'll have to sort that out internally.
Sounds good, thank you. Councillor Bailey, you had a question?
Not so much a question, well, I guess it is a question, it's just if we're going to phase this in and Public Works and engineering are going to figure this out, can that plan be shared with council and put out just only because we've kind of gone through this before where we do this and staff knows, other people don't. I think it is a fairly big issue, like as Councillor Yeo said. I get a lot of phone calls from Little Britain about speeding, the school zone, Oakwood, Woodville, and I know once this hits the communities that we're doing it, that's then what the phone calls are going to be is, I drove through Oakwood today and they've got 40 signs. How come there's no 40 signs in Little Britain? How come there's no 40 signs in Manila? When is all that happening? So if that can kind of get organized and be put out at one time, I think that would be a great help.
Yeah, and I think as part of the communication, that council can be included in that communication so that everybody sort of knows what's going on, how it's being phased in, and what areas are being done. 2020 budget item, so we assume it'll take place over, over the course of 2020, right? Do you have a comment, engineering?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Can I recommend that as part of the motion, the funding be identified in the 2020 budget, most likely in operating, but it also could be a capital budget. Through that budget process, that will be flushed out, the $172,755. That's for the installation of the signs. We might need a small component for an educational program. I'm not sure how much that would cost.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if council passes this motion, then you'll include it in your budget wherever appropriate coming forward in 2020. We're not asking it for 2019, so, right? We're talking 2020, so if council approves it here, then you've got it in your work plan for 2020 to put into your budget. Correct? All good to go. Okay? Yes, I know we've asked for a 0% budget, and absolutely. That's why you'll have to put most of it in capital. Councillor Ashmore, you had a question?
Speed zone, so what's the definition of that? So it could be anything over what, X amount of population, or like what's the criteria? I know that on Heights Road for the Mennonite parochial school, their school, it's down to 60, so that's a school zone. I know we have them on school zones, but how do we, what's the criteria to qualify for a community speed zone? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The designated community speed zones are already designated in the consolidated speed bylaw. So it's a list of 23 towns, villages, settlements, or hamlets, or just built-up areas that are grouped together in Schedule A of the Consolidated Speed Law to be zoned for 50 speed. So as to a way to easily group these areas, I'm just giving the option to say they're already 50, let's make those a 40.
And that's figure 2 in the report, correct?
Correct.
The list in your report, Ron, is figure 2, lists all the community speed zones.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, excluding a few that are just a couple roads that may have some access that is not assumed, or is just 2 roads that are together that already have 50 or 40 signs within it, that it just doesn't make sense to do this to.
Any further questions? Do you want to sum up, Councillor? Pretty good? Everybody's clear on the motion? Yes? All in favor? That's passed. Okay, so next extraction, thanks, gentlemen. Next extraction, Environmental Advisory Committee 1412, Councillor Ashmore, your extraction?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Everything's fine on this. I just had a question about through you to Director Marshall. Roadside vegetation management. So what I'm just wondering is how is this going to affect the brushing of our roads and roadways? If we're going to be, who are we going to be getting the orders from? Like, you can't brush here, you can't brush here, because of some issues with basically vegetation or wildlife or bird nestings and whatnot. So who calls the shots here as far as from now on? If we agree to this criteria, and then we have to obviously adhere to it really strictly, but how's this going to impact, maybe I should ask Public Works, but how's this going to impact our brushing program when we want to get brushing done, but we can't do anything because we've got restrictions on where we can and when we can brush? So.
I think it's a Public Works question, isn't it?
Public Works, yeah.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I missed most of that. I heard a little bit at the end about brushing operations. So we program our brushing in accordance with several pieces of legislation. The first one being Migratory Birds Act, which outlines when and where we can. We currently do our brushing operations outside of that window, which means primarily we're brushing late winter and then into the late fall. The windows through that time period. So we recognize there is a time crunch in there. We can do brushing operations through that window, but we need to do inspections and meet certain requirements to clear the area of migratory birds before we actually undertake additional work. I don't know if that answers the question or not. But
You'll move it as printed. Second by Councillor O'Reilly. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. 1413 is extracted by Councillor Ashmore. Information report on Bill 108. Now you can pick on Director Marshall.
Yeah, so I just had a question through you to Mr. Mayor, to Director Marshall. In this report here, it says that we have Bill 108 that's been passed. So how's that going to affect? I'm reading how it's going to affect everything that we do, and it says that we have to develop an employment strategy. Well, we already have an employment strategy, I thought. So what is it doing to change things as far as what we do here? I'm just kind of not 100% sure on this report because it says we have to do things that we're already doing. We've already got an employment strategy for agri-food, manufacturing, tourism, culture, and engineered products and services. That's our mandate, right? That's what we want to do. But we have a list of things here that that as a result of Bill 108. So how does that Bill 108 affect things from now on? That's just my question, because I'm not sure how it's going to affect us, like, financially as a municipality.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a number of aspects to Bill 108 that are listed in the report. It has impacts on how we deal with our development charges. It has impacts on how we deal with the Endangered Species Act, our Conservation Authority, So there's the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal Act, so there's a whole variety of things that are impacted through Bill 108.
Through you, so the Development Charges Act, we still have the ability to make changes to that through the task force?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there are some specific changes that were made to the Development Charges Act, which we are taking into account as part of the Development Charge Task Force review right now. And we just recently had a presentation from the consultants on the types of changes to expect, and we will certainly take that into account when we review the Dalton charge fees.
So, Councillor, they've changed some of the parameters of the Development Charges Act, but our task force and our consultant and we as a council can still set the task force rates or incentives, whatever we want to do at the end. It's just some of the rules on how we do it have changed a little bit through the Bill 108.
So we don't lose our ability to change?
No.
Okay.
Nope. It'll still come forward for a review at the end of the year, just under a little bit of a different criteria. Move it as printed to be received. Second by Councillor O'Reilly. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. We did 14.113. 14.2.3 is the memo regarding Thurstonia docks. I extracted it. I don't know why I extracted it. I just don't like it. But I think I guess I can't be more honest than that. It just seems like we're not really getting as far as we need to go on this, and I'm just wondering if the solicitor can comment on some of the things here about, we've given them more time. I know there was till July 15th when they could get in the water, but another 60 days is the end of summer, and it just seems like we seem to be being pushed off till summer's over, and now we don't need our dock, we'll worry about it next year. And I know we're trying for some kind of an enforcement here, and are you comfortable with this, or is this creating just a real big headache here, or should we extend it 30 days or 2 weeks or 2 days, or, do you have any kind of an opinion on where we can sort of go from here to try and wrap this up? Because I know we have other areas we need to deal with as well.
Yes, I believe that the 23 residents in Thurstonia who have not applied and would be affected by this decision are a very small minority of the 216 dock owners who have applied. So my concern would be the impact on those who have applied, they've been paying their fees, while their neighbor sits on their dock who hasn't paid fees. I think that is a big concern and will be a concern to the residents who have complied with the bylaw. Secondly, municipal law enforcement is ready to proceed. They could move some of this back, but we have received no concerns from the residents with respect to their inability to remove because of a timing issue. If we had those concerns, we deal with those one-on-one. Another aspect of the recommendation that could be of concern is that city staff had considered that we would review this area and any potential spaces that are opened up as a result of removals when the staff returns from their maternity leave in 2020. At that time, we thought we'd have a good idea of what availability exists and what, if any, spots could fill, what properties could benefit from those spaces. One of our concerns when we started this process was that people sometimes weren't in proximity to their homes, so they might be far away from the dock space, and that results in sometimes people driving and they're parking on Hazel, which doesn't have any sidewalks. It's a very narrow road, and so one of the thoughts we had is we would look at that entire area and say, if we should have docks here, where should they go, how many should we have, and then bring that to council. So I would feel that this recommendation would jumpstart that when we're not really ready to do that. And I would recommend that that would deal with where we go for the next 5-year term. The residents that exist and their locations exist for a 5-year term. If there could be any movement for them to move closer to their properties, that should happen at the start of the next term. So there are some concerns with this proposal.
Okay, so from my perspective, if somebody has an issue with a dock where they can't get somebody to come in and remove it within that time frame, they can contact Realty Services and make arrangements. I mean, we're not going in and arbitrarily ripping out docks. If, you know, if they're saying, look, I just need a couple more weeks, you're open to those on a one-on-one basis, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I think we've put a process in place, folks, and at some point we need to follow the process. If we keep backtracking, we're never going to get anywhere. It's just my opinion. So does somebody want to move that it be received, and then you can go from there? You'll move that, Councillor Seymour Fagan, Councillor Vale. All in favor? It's passed, and then I don't know where you want to go from there, but that's all I'm going to support. So I've got my motion. You want to do any follow-up or anything else?
Yeah, the 60-day thing was something that, you know, it could be shortened down. Obviously, you want to do it 30 days, but the main thing is that people wanted the ability to transfer their docks if they, before that, logistically, like if you're right near to a dock, you should have that ability to gain access to that one or to lease it. But the ability to at least get onto a list, like we were told, people were told there was a list and you'd be on the queue. That's what people want. They want to at least get onto the list. And then people ask staff and then they get a different answer. No, there is no list. And then the next week there is a list. So really all the people want to know is really two main things is can they acquire a neighbor's dock, a lease, and can they get on a list? I know there's only like 23 left now, and I know this is the final curtain call, but there are a few little things that really need to be dealt with, and I think people should have the ability to at least get on the list. And but the ability to say a neighbor wants to, they're giving up their dock and the next neighbor wants to lease it, that person should be able to have the ability to lease that dock. So maybe if I put forward a motion that would allow a neighbor to lease a dock that's in close proximity. You know, that's what they need. I mean, it's just something that even if it's not, but that's not going to happen, then you're going to have, you know, it's going to be a free-for-all, basically. That's what it's turned into. So that people who were on that list thought they were on that list, but they're not anymore. That's the confusing thing.
Let's get some clarification from the solicitor then, if we can, Ron, and maybe we can figure out where you want to go. Go ahead.
Yes, after careful consideration, Realty Services decided not to maintain a list of people who are interested in moving their dock space from one space to another, because we found that administering that list would be it was becoming rather exhaustive. People were asking if they were on the list, if they'd moved up the list, where they were on the list. And we realized that because the plan was in 5 years to come forward with a comprehensive plan, we had all we needed. We know where all the properties are. And at that time, the people who were on the list could have moved. And that we know where the docks are because we have a survey now. So we knew that we would be able to match the properties with their closest dock and be able to determine need. We could, at that time, if we were validating need, we could send out a note to the residents and ask them if they're interested. And if anyone wasn't interested, at that time we could pull those out of the list, if you will, or the plan, and that would be a much easier exercise than this call-in list, just because people would keep calling in to see where they were on the list. And really, I think the best way to analyze the needs is in the 5 years, who's at the table, where are they, where is their property in proximity to available dock spaces.
So if somebody has a license for a dock and they want to transfer that license to their neighbor, they don't want their dock anymore, but their neighbor wants a dock, can they make arrangements with the city to come in and say, I'm willing, I have a license, but I'm willing to transferred over to this resident. You're fine with me having the dock, but I don't want to maintain it anymore. I want to give it to my neighbor. Would they not have the ability to do that now? I mean, is that?
We haven't received that exact fact scenario, but we have had the request for people to be able to transfer their lease to somebody else or to sell their lease. And what we've said is if people want to renew, they can renew, because we don't have a comprehensive plan, that we're not recommending transfers to a neighbor, to another person at this time. So we can look at the whole portfolio. We know one of the problems in that area is really overcrowding. So we thought that it would be best to start off with a more streamlined pool of people who have existing rights as opposed to bringing new people in that we might have to deal with overcrowding because of them being located there in the future.
So your plan is to remove the docks that aren't interested in renewing their licenses. Once they're all removed, have a look at what space is available, and then if somebody wants to apply to have one of those spaces, they can do that through the regular process like anybody else would. Is that correct?
So once we remove all the docks, we look at what's available. I also note that Hazel Street itself, there's been some complaints about insufficient width, insufficient sidewalk, there's no sidewalk, and that we have in our next, I believe, 3-year plan to upgrade Hazel. So taking into consideration the space requirements we may need for that road in the future, and once that's done, the plan was to come forward with a plan as to what would be the best outline of where docks should be, how many docks should be, and who should get those docks. And that would come to council for approval before we reached out to the residents to ask them for, to enter into another subsequent 5-year term.
Okay, thank you. Councillor? Sounds like it's going to work itself out eventually, but...
Yeah, I'll just receive it, that's fine, I can't.
So the motion to receive has passed? Okay, thank you. Item 1424 is the memo regarding the level of service for Gillis Street, Killarney Bay Road, and Grove Road. It's Councillor Elmsley's. My only concern, we have been working with several of these roads that staff have, and they have to try and put an agreement in place. These are private roads, and it is a continuation of service. I have no problem with the memo, but if the councillor is willing to just, by putting December 31st, 2021, to me, you're not giving much of an incentive to continue to work on an agreement, and there should be an agreement in place, and I think they're all appreciate that. So if you change it to spring 2020, it gives a year, and then it'll come back to council, but at least there's a bit more of an incentive just to continue working on putting an agreement in place. So that's my ask. If you're willing to amend it to 2020, I'm fine with the rest of it. Are you okay with that? So you'll move that? Thank you. Second by Councillor Yeo. Any further? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. So that's our consent agenda. Yes?
Just through you to the Director of Public Works. You're fine to go forward. There is some grading and some other things that need to be done on those roads, on at least 2 of those roads, Gillis and the Grove Road. Can they be done in the very near future?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, there are concerns, but at the direction of council, we'll issue resources and put it into the work plan to get done. As far as the exact date, I can't provide that right now, but we'll work
I
into
wasn't looking for an exact day. I was just looking for, it will be done as soon as you can get to them?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
I was on Gillis Road the other day, so on a bike ride, and the road was perfect. So I'm assuming they've already been there and done some grading. Grove Road? I was on Grove Road the other day. I was on one of the roads. It's near where I live, and it's in great shape. So I don't know if it's been graded or what, but I don't even know what roads I'm on, but they're all good shape. So I think you're ahead of it. Yeah, I need a GPS on my bike. So petitions, item 15.1 is a petition regarding the resurfacing of Lakeland Road in Bobcaygeon. We had the deputation. Can I suggest the petition received from John Rochelle regarding the resurfacing of Lakeland Road, Bobcaygeon be received and referred to engineering for a review back by Q3 2019 as we suggested? Councillor Seymour Fagan, you'll move that. Second. Councillor Richardson, questions? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Item 15.2 is a petition regarding the proposed apartment development at 3 St. David Street and 4 Riverview Road in Lindsay. You have a copy of it in your agenda. That the petition received from John Ireland regarding the proposed apartment development at 3 David Street and 4 Riverview Road, Lindsay, be received and referred to the Planning Department for review. Councillor Yeo, seconded by Councillor O'Reilly. Just as a bit of background, this public meeting already came to the Planning Committee, and we're just waiting for a final report back to the Planning Committee for a recommendation to Council. So we're open to public comments. I mean, that's the stage we're in, so referring this to the Planning Department includes it in those public comments for consideration on a report back. So all in favor? That's passed. We have no other or new business. Bylaws, are there any extractions from the bylaws? Seeing none, Councillor Yeo.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Dunn, that the bylaws shown in section 17.1 of the agenda, namely item 17.1.12 and including 17.1.5, be read a first, second, third time, passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. We have a bylaw to provide the drainage works in the city of Kawartha Lakes to be known as the Webster Municipal Drain. We just need to do a first and second reading, that a bylaw to provide the drainage works in the city of Kawartha Lakes as the Webster Municipal Drain be read a first and second time, provisionally adopted and numbered. Councillor Vale, you'll move that. It's part of the process. Councillor Elmsley, you'll second it. All in favor? That's passed. We're going to go into closed. We're going to do closed session, so let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and go into closed session to wrap things up. Thank you.